I really love the 1992 Tim Burton Batman movie, Batman Returns. The first Tim Burton Batman movie is also very good, but the second is just it's great. I think it's great, but maybe you have to have grown up with it like I did. But my opinion is it's a great movie and you should watch it. So as far as my review goes, that would be my review. But there are some things about this movie that I find interesting and that I want to talk about. So it's more of a let's watch or like a commentary where usually I would show the movie and I would just kind of point things out. But obviously I can't because of copyright. I can't show you the movie, so you do have to watch the movie on your own. But there are some things that I can talk about and that I can point out. So let's just go through them. So the movie starts out with basically Pee Wee Herman, the actor who normally played Pee Wee Herman, playing Penguin's dad, um, which is, by the way, that's a role he reprised in the Gotham series as well, which I think is very nice that they remembered that and brought him back to reprise his role in the series as well. So Pee Wee Herman, Pee Wee Herman is playing Penguin's dad, and we see Penguin's birth. And they almost made Penguin. I mean, he is kind of the villain. He's not. I feel he's not even the main villain in this one. The main villain is Max Schreck, played by Christopher Walken. I'll get to that in a second. Um, Officially, Penguin is supposed to be like the main villain, but they made him so sympathetic that I feel, partially he doesn't even come across as a villain, because Tim Burton obviously has a soft spot for villains, and he just injects them with a lot of sympathetic elements, and that's one of them. Even though of course he's still the villain, but his origin story is just it's so sad. We see his birth, and he gets rejected by his parents, and of course Penguin would say he gets rejected for being different, but he really gets rejected because he's just a total freak. We see him eat the cat. So yeah, so Pee Wee Herman decides to get rid of him, and in a scene that is very very similar to basically the origin story of Moses. And then we see this wonderful special effects scene, where the baby carriage floats through the sewer, and these are all practical effects. So they actually built a sewer like that, and the entire opening credits scene consists of just incredible practical effects. Actually, the entire movie consists of incredible practical effects. The movie does already have some CGI in it, but if you didn't know it was CGI, you would never even notice it. And it's only like really small parts. The main effects are all practical. So for example, in this sewer scene, like I said, these are all practical effects, with the only exception being the bats. The bats are CGI. Some of the animals in this movie are CGI, but most of the animals are real. But when it comes to scenes, where you need to have the animals do things that are difficult to train, then sometimes they use a little CGI, like with the bats, because you can't really train bats to fly a certain way. So after this great opening scene, we get to the actual villain, which, like I said, isn't really Penguin, but a villain that Tim Burton kind of made up, called Max Schreck. Max Schreck is not based on the Batman comics. Well, he's actually based on. Well, at least the name is based on. There is actually a Max Schreck, and he's the actor who played Nosferatu, another reference to a silent movie, because this movie is full of references to silent movies. Actually, the entire style of the movie, the way Gotham is portrayed, and also a lot of references, just so many references. I'm not going to list them all. I'm just going to list the main ones. But there is so many references and stylistic influences from German expressionist silent movies. It's incredible. So the entire look of Gotham City was inspired basically by Metropolis. Not Metropolis, the home city of Superman, but Metropolis, the German expressionist silent movie. So all the artistic and stylistic elements are from that and from other German expressionist silent movies, and also just a lot of direct references that no one who isn't into silent movies is ever going to get. I'll point out some of them. So, speaking of names, the name of Max Schreck, the villain, is taken from Max Schreck, the actor, which, by the way, Max Schreck in German literally means, that is the real name of the actor who played Nosferatu, but the name literally means the maximum amount of terror. That's how you could translate the name. Maximum, Schreck, terror. His last name is literally, or you could translate it literally as terror. That's the real name of the real guy who played Nosferatu. So that's where they got the name from. But the character itself, like I said, it's not based on the Batman comics, but I feel it is based on someone, and I'm just gonna blurt it out. I feel Max Schreck as a character is actually based on Jakob Rothschild, which is how you pronounce his name, though you Americans usually pronounce it Rothschild. And by the way, that's not a Jewish name. That's a German name, and it means red shield. Rot Shield, red shield. All these names have meanings in German, including my own name, by the way, which isn't Jewish either. Well, at least Goldstein is not Jewish. Goldstein, again, is a German name, and it's a relatively common German name. Though, of course, I actually, I got it from 1984. It's a reference to 1984, obviously. But Emmanuel is actually the part of my name that's Jewish, because that's Hebrew, and that actually is my name. Emmanuel is my real name, and that's the part that's Jewish. That's because that's Hebrew. So yeah, a lot of you. I don't know. Some of you Americans seem to think I don't know, but it's a prejudice. It's a stereotype. Every time you Americans hear the German word for stone, Stein, you think it must be Jewish or something. I don't know. So you when you a beer mug, when you Americans drink beer, right? You call that a Stein, right? So is that Jewish? That makes no sense. Stein just is just German for stone, and it's a totally normal German word that doesn't have anything to do with Hebrew or with anything really. It's just German word for stone. I don't know why you Americans always seem to think that would be Jewish, or maybe it's because of gold. Maybe you think that that every name that has the word gold in it must be Jewish. That's a horrible stereotype, isn't it? So anyway, I'm not trying to defend Max Rothschild. I'm not trying to defend Jakob Rothschild, but his name is not Jewish, even though he, of course, is Jewish, but his name is German. And so I've also wanted to use that opportunity to clear up that my name actually is Jewish, but only my first name. And Goldstein, again, is a perfectly normal German name here in Germany, as long as you're not prejudiced against Jews. So, Yeah, nothing wrong with Jews, but yeah, let's not talk about Jakob Rothschild because, well, he is kind of like, well, that's the whole point, right? I mean, the character of Max Schreck is obviously supposed to be based on Jakob Rothschild. So yeah, so much for that. If you watch the movie, you know what kind of person he is, and he really is that kind of person. I mean, yeah, she's just yeah. Well, that let's leave it at that. But it's very obvious that if you look into his life, very obvious references there to the way Max Schreck is portrayed, the character in this movie. Very obvious references, and also just stylistically as well. But that's especially obvious later on in the movie when Max Schreck is giving the ball, is having the masquerade ball, and then and you can see these. There's a lot of references in the masquerade ball, in the costume ball or whatever you call it, right? Where they're dressing up, and there's just so many references just in that one scene, with all the costumes and the masks they're wearing, and some of these masks are very obvious references to some of the masks that Jakob Rothschild has actually been wearing in real life. So that's very obvious. A very obvious reference to Jakob Rothschild with the character of Max Schreck. And also very telling, the scene with, and Max Schreck, of course, is played by Christopher Walken, and Tim Burton. Originally, Tim Burton didn't want to use Christopher Walken because originally he said that Christopher Walken was too scary, but then he realized, well, the character is supposed to be scary, so then he changed his mind and realized Christopher Walken is actually perfect. There's this very telling scene with Max Schreck, played by Christopher Walken. He's not the kind of villain who directly does evil stuff. He's more like the kind of villain behind the scenes, pulling the strings. And his goal in this movie, among other things, is to build a power plant. And there is a very telling scene where he talks about the power plant. And, and the other people say, I think it's actually Bruce Wayne, who tells Max Schreck that they have enough power in Gotham City. And Max Schreck responds by saying that you can never have enough power, and that if his life had a meaning, that would be it. That you can never have enough power. And that's very telling. And obviously, when he says that, he's not just referring to the power that comes out of a power plant, but to actual power, right? I actually watched Batman Returns when it came out in 1992. But, back then I thought that... well, back then I was still a little prejudiced myself. So I thought that I already noticed back then that Max Schreck is supposed to be this kind of capitalist villain. And I also noticed the references to Jakob Rothschild. Even back then I noticed that. So back then I thought, maybe Tim Burton is a bit anti-Semitic for criticizing Jakob Rothschild, or maybe he's anti-capitalist. Maybe that's the message, But then I realized, no, that's not the message. He's not criticizing capitalists, and he's certainly not criticizing Jews. Because you can see that very well in that scene with Bruce Wayne. I mean, they're both capitalists, right? But the one and and they're sitting on the same table and having sitting at the same table and having these discussions, about what to do and about money and power, and but one is the villain and one is the good guy, right? So what makes the good guy, what makes the villain is not that he's a billionaire and that he has a lot of power, because the good guy, Bruce Wayne, also is a billionaire and has a lot of power. So that's the message is not, capitalists are evil or rich people are evil or anything like that. That's not the message. Because that's not what makes Max Schreck the villain. What makes him the villain is this lust for power that knows no boundaries. He already has all the power he can have, but still he wants more power, right? And he's and the way he seeks power is rather unethical. And you can see that very well in the scenes with the Penguin, where Max Schreck has these dealings with the Penguin. And, so on the one hand, the Penguin is extorting, not extorting, blackmailing. The Penguin is blackmailing Max Schreck because he has all this dirt on him. There's this wonderful scene right at the beginning, because the Penguin in this movie lives in the sewer, right? So everything other people flush down, he picks up, right? So he has all this dirt, this literal dirt on Max Schreck, and so the Penguin is blackmailing Max Schreck, but Max Schreck is also using the Penguin for his political gains and for his agenda and political ambitions. So they're kind of blackmailing and using each other. And it's like literally the criminal underground. It's just that in a Tim Burton movie, the criminal underground is literally underground. But it's a very cynical, it's a very cynical portrayal of basically of the underworld, not the underworld, the criminal underworld. Yes, it's a very accurate portrayal. Not accurate. I don't know if it's accurate, but it's a very cynical portrayal of the world and of certain power-hungry people and of the criminal underworld. Yes. So even though you have all the usual action scenes and all the usual fight scenes that you expect from a Batman movie, these fight and action scenes are not where the conflict really plays out. The deciding scenes are not the fight scenes, but like what happens behind the scenes. So it's a very cynical movie. So, for example, the way the villains in this movie really attack Batman is not in the fight scenes. It's not through physical combat, but by conspiring together to really destroy him. And they realize that to really destroy him, they can't just, it's not enough to kill him physically. So their goal is to destroy what he stands for, right? Because they realize he's a symbol. So even if he dies, what he stands for, the symbol, lives on. So they conspire to destroy his reputation. So, and that's the determining factor. It's not the fight scenes, but what happens behind the scenes, what all the intrigues but I know that sounds boring, but if you have seen the movie, it's not a boring movie. It's a great movie. It does have a lot of action, but it is very cynical. It is very cynical, but it's true. I mean, that's how things sadly are at least in politics, I guess. So they're using a lot of very dirty tactics. And because, like I said, they're not just trying to destroy Batman physically, they're trying to destroy Batman, well, the whole symbol of what Batman stands for. And Max Schreck even says that, after they tried to do that, and after they failed to kill him physically, Max Schreck even literally says that it doesn't matter, because what matters is that they lost faith in old symbols. He literally says that. The goal of Max Schreck is to make the people lose faith in old symbols. Now, what might that refer to? Again, I feel that's actually a reference to the Bible. That's actually a reference to Moses, and that's why I feel that even though Tim Burton obviously criticizes and doesn't like Jakob Rothschild, Tim Burton really is not anti-Semitic, because the entire movie is filled with references to the Bible and with references to Moses. And that's another reference. But of course here, Max Schreck is obviously trying to get the people, well, as he said, to abandon old symbols. And I feel that's not just referring to Batman, that's also referring to, religion, because a lot of people look up to religions for guidance, and that's what these kinds of people do in real life. They're not propagating Judaism, certainly not. Some of them are actually attacking Judaism. And of course, there's nothing wrong with Judaism, and faith is very important. But some of these, let's just say it out directly. There is some very dark aspects to Max Schreck, because even the name Max Schreck is not just a reference to the actor who played Nosferatu. It might also be a reference to Sina Schreck, which is the other famous person who is called Schreck, and she actually has Schreck as a last name. And like I said, Schreck literally just means terror, but Sina Schreck as well literally has that name. And Sina Schreck is, of course, the daughter of Anton Szandor LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. So the name Schreck might actually, first off, the name Schreck literally means terror. Secondly, it's also a reference to Sina Schreck, the daughter of the founder of the Church of Satan. So some very obvious, very dark references there that someone like Tim Burton does not make by accident. He knows his references, and he knows his dark stuff. If anyone knows about dark and maybe even borderline occult stuff, it's Tim Burton. So these references are not by accident at all. And you can see that very well, like I said, in the scene with the masquerade ball, where they're just, and actually throughout the entire movie, there's just a ton of dark imagery, a ton of occult imagery, especially everything associated with Max Schreck. It's very dark, it's very occult, especially in the ball scene. It's very obvious where they have all these almost demonic masks. And some of these masks, if you know anything about Satanism, you know that some of these masks are literally inspired by satanic rituals. So some very dark, very cynical intonations here. And that's also why it's so important to Max Schreck to destroy people's faith in what he calls old symbols. Now maybe you get that reference and get what that means and why there are so many references to the Bible. Some very dark intonations there. I'll leave it at that. And just watch the movie again with what I hinted at in mind, and I'll think you'll agree. One more thing though. Speaking of the masquerade ball, there's another reference to a silent movie. I just love that reference, and namely to the Phantom of the Opera, the silent movie, which was actually one of the first movies that was in color. And that scene in the original silent movie, they actually stole a scene. They stole an entire and a shot for shot. They remade a scene from the Phantom of the Opera silent movie, and that scene in the original movie was one of the first scenes that was shot in color. Yeah, but you'll have to know about the Phantom of the Opera silent movie to get that reference. But if you know it, it's a beautiful reference, and it's a beautiful that entire ball scene is actually a beautiful remake of that beautiful, gorgeous scene in the Phantom of the Opera silent movie. Well, except of course that Tim Burton added all this occult symbolism on top of that. Oh, and one more thing, just to reinforce what I said about the fight scenes. Even the way Batman fights back, the way he actually fights back, again, is not through physical conflict, is not through the fight scenes. It's well, again, it's actually by exposing the by exposing the Penguin, who the Penguin is a great character in this movie, played very beautifully by Danny DeVito. It's beautiful, the way he portrays him. It's great. Of course, there's also a lot of irony, because in a way the Penguin is the opposite of Batman. Batman basically, he's deep down inside, Batman is, or Bruce Wayne is a good guy, right? And he has good intentions, but he dresses up like this monster, right? Penguin is the other way around. Inside, he is a monster, but outwardly, he tries to portray himself as, well, he's trying to become the mayor, right? And outwardly he has this. He's trying to, well, with the help of Max Schreck, he tries to cultivate this persona of being, of being dignified and civilized, but it's all fake. And the Batman is a good guy inside, but a monster on the outside. Penguin is the other way around. He's a good guy on the outside, but a monster on the inside. So the way the villains in this movie, like I said, the way they attack Batman is by trying to destroy what he stands for. And the way Batman fights back is by exposing the Penguin as the monster he truly is on the inside. And also, they're basically all furries. I mean, this is just a joke, but think about it. This is a movie about furries, because you have all of them, obviously except Max Schreck, but he's not based on the Batman comics. So all the characters in this movie dress up like animals, and then they have sex while being dressed up as these animal characters that they also literally identify as. There's this scene where at the end of the movie where the Penguin tells people that he's not a human being, but that he's an animal. So they literally identify as the animal they dress up as, and then they have sex. So they're furries.